our FDEs, they eat the pain and excrete product. And the key thing here is that we're building product at the edge that matters for our customers, not from the reverse of, hey, I have an idea that I can make some money. I'm going to start this company to build my widget so I can sell this piece of software. And so we've done the inverse. We've started on the hardest problem first, and then we've expanded that now into the commercial space. But our goal ultimately is to not sell a piece of software, it's to drive outcomes for businesses, and we'll figure out how we then monetize that and work together. And so
let's just take a step back. Okay. So, I think I think for most folks, they hear a lot of buzzwords like AIP, Ontology, like these are great things. And I want Chad to talk about that. I think let's just talk about first, like what is Palantir? Palantir is a US software company. It was founded in 2003 in response to the 9/11 terrorist attacks, right? So we're a mission focused company. If you recall, the 9/11 Commission report revealed that while the intelligence to prevent the 9/11 attacks existed, it was scattered across various agencies that lacked an effective method of information sharing. So this prompted our founders to develop software aimed at assisting the U.S. government in its fight against terrorism. The software was designed to help intelligence analysts sift through vast amounts of data, locate critical information for tracking terror cells and potential threats, all without infringing on civil liberties. So that's something that we're really proud of. We're a very mission focused company. We feel like we've, as a company, have made a tremendous impact in stopping terrorist attacks around the world over the past 20 years, and we've done that without infringing on civil liberties. We've built in access controls. We've built in auditing so that you can go in and make sure that, hey, just because you found the information or you stopped the terrorist attack, you didn't obtain that information illegally. So we're very proud of the privacy and civil liberties infrastructure that we've built in this company. It's embedded in our roots, and it's something that, again, that we'd like to really boast about. So that was sort of chapter one. As the company progressed, the leaders at Palantir identified that the challenge of aggregating data from disparate sources extended beyond counterterrorism. They discovered that nearly every large enterprise and government agency faced similar difficulties. Consequently, the company expanded its footprint to include working with some of the largest companies in the world. And the 20 years of helping these companies and government agencies aggregate siloed sources of data and build operational software has really, I think, positioned us for this moment that a few of the folks have mentioned, this AIP moment, this AI moment that Chad talked about. So I want to turn it over to Chad. Chad, given the history of the company, why is Palantir, in your opinion, positioned so well to embrace this moment and to be a leader in this space for many years to come?
Yeah, so I think this is kind of, if we take a step back from like what have we been doing and how do we operate? I think that's key, because when you're building these systems that they're truly life or death, you're at the edge on the ground. And so we have a concept called forward deployed engineers. And so our engineers are out in the field, whether that's in the USG space or it's the commercial space, and they're a boot camp, if they're on the ground at the customer. The idea is they're sitting closest to the problem space and feeling that pain. And so Sham, our CTO, loves to say, our FDEs, they eat the pain and excrete product. And the key thing here is that we're building product at the edge that matters for our customers, not from the reverse of, hey, I have an idea that I can make some money. I'm going to start this company to build my widget so I can sell this piece of software. And so we've done the inverse. We've started on the hardest problem first, and then we've expanded that now into the commercial space. But our goal ultimately is to not sell a piece of software, it's to drive outcomes for businesses, and we'll figure out how we then monetize that and work together. And so that's really the change in the shift. And so when we think about that in the AI space, if we've been building these operational systems in the real world battlefield and now in the battlefield of enterprises, the real trick here is I have to have a fully integrated stack to really do this at scale. And like, Dr. Karp says, it's a Tower of Babel. Like, we are now having all of these enterprise systems that can't communicate. You see these maps of the enterprise software space, and now AI is just making it that much complex. Like, that integration where they're not communicating, they're not effective. It's like I have different security, I have different protocols across all these different software landscapes. Like, how do I move quickly? And so because of our government roots, we had to build a platform that was top to bottom, could do everything in the most secure, highly classified environments, And now that same concept plays for our commercial space. So all that being said is we have a fully vertically integrated platform all the way from the source data, whether it's streaming, batch, micro batch, all whatever source you can think of, multimedia data, anything you think of, all the way to the top application building, AI interfaces, AI agents. But if you think about this now with the AI component, we see a lot of people just wanting to deploy an LM. I want to tell my board that I deployed Gen AI, right? We hear a lot of that with these co-pilots. The challenge is if you don't have the fundamental stack below it and all the things to do this in a secure way, you can't scale effectively. And so there's a lot of different things that we have across our stack, and we can get into some of those things of kind of why we're a differentiated piece. But I think you guys kind of hit on this. We've heard the term ontology time and time again already here. The ontology is the digital representation of your business processes. So it's the nouns and verbs of how you operate, but it's more of a knowledge graph. So normally, these other companies, the Snowflakes, Databricks, Microsoft, whatever, all these other companies working in the cloud data warehouse space, they're still basing things on techniques that were developed in the 90s. Now we've moved into the cloud, we scaled them a little differently, but it's still the same techniques of I have a dimensional data warehouse with facts and dimensions, and you put your BI tool on top of it. And that's literally coming from Ralph Kimball in 1997. So all of these things are related to old techniques, and you see that we haven't progressed. We're just moving stuff to the cloud. It's a little faster, bigger scale, more data. But have we solved problems more efficiently? And this is where the ontology, being that digital representation of your business, is key, because if it's in the language of your business, operating in the way that you are operating, this is how LLMs can now navigate that knowledge graph of your business to take action. And so that's really a key point about how we operationalize things is the ontology is the connected piece of all of your business systems together into how you operate. And then you integrate people and process and you create feedback loops. All of those things are facilitated on ontology. And that's why we see that really as the moat is we've been building that ontology in that government space since 2003. And so that ontology and how it scales and performs and how you register the data, logic, and actions of your business, that is the key differentiator that then enables us to move very quickly in a safe and secure manner with AI. And so all of that is a long-winded story of kind of putting it together of there's a lot of pieces and components, but you have to have a system of systems, not just one system, and then stitch another thing together. And so in enterprise, that is a system of systems. And so this is where Palantir's approach comes in with that fully integrated platform, go end to end and move very quickly and securely.
So Chad, I think let's take a step back as well to understand this broader point of the ontology, because at the end of the day, as I've researched the company, that really is the definitive moat. And if people are interested in Palantir, that's ultimately what they have to learn about to understand the thesis behind the company. Can you step back and tell us, in your experience, you've been in big data for a long time, you've worked at many different companies, led a lot of strategy for big data in those companies. Why does an enterprise need a strategy in regards to dealing with software, in regards to business intelligence and business operations? Why do they need to have their unstructured data structured in some meaningful way? And then what uniquely is Palantir saying to those enterprises with the ontology that is conducive enough to them realize if they have an ontology, then AI, which is the buzzword, becomes way more useful? So why do enterprises care about having a software stack? And then why does the ontology set up the prerequisites for actually enabling operational AI?
If I can add a little question in here, Chad, before you said with the ontology you can speak the language of your business. What does that mean?
All right, we'll answer that first and then I'll get to Amit's question. So speaking the language of your business, the ontology, so normally if you have a dimensional data warehouse or these other data modeling techniques, you're really translating systems language in the back end in kind of a pseudo way that makes it a little easier for users to understand and for systems to perform. And then you put BI tools on top of it where they can kind of build some reports. There's a gap there, though, whenever we're translating those things where IT talks one language and the business talks another language, right? The business doesn't talk in the terms of the back end systems, right? They talk in how they operate. And so the goal of ontology is to actually model the way your business actually operates and transform those underlying systems into that model so that your business users are working together in this homogeneous language of how you operate, because the ontology can scale and be dynamic to represent that rich component. And the other thing I'll just say on that, Arnie, is also that the ontology is not just data. It's not just a data model. We also have the logic and actions of your business, which is key, because in the reporting landscape or these other things, it's like, okay, I have a data representation, but now I got to swivel chair over to this other sort of system of record and type in some stuff to make it happen. With the ontology, I can register those and actually orchestrate those actions with a single click in a rich data application. And so you can create these data applications that are in that language that people actually use to run their business. So, Amit, what was your first question again? Now I've already lost it since Arnie jumped in.
I want to explain it like I'm a third grader, really. Like I need you to go to ChatGPT mode. The prompt is explain it like a third grader. Um why does a Best Buy need a software strategy? Why does United, like why do these big enterprises that are working with airlines or laptops, why do they need
Yeah.
software to modernize their operations?
Well, I mean, ultimately it comes down to scale, right? It comes back to, traditionally when you start a small business, you have 3 or 4 people and you can communicate and get things done. As you scale, you need systems in place. And so really building mechanisms through systems to operate your business. So, you need softwares for financial, for audit, SOX compliant, all that kind of stuff. You need things for managing your warehouse. Again, it comes back to software helps scale these systems and communicate across people, teams, and countries and organizations, right? So software is supposed to be the facilitator of all of that. But the
Okay, so then
problem is
the
it's
ontology, right? Yeah, so where does the ontology come in
yeah.
from there?
Yeah, so the problem is it's fragmented. Over the years, it's become only more fragmented. Now with SaaS products, everyone's got their widget to sell you to solve a finite problem, a finite pain, right? And so you have a thing for a forecast, you have a thing for integrated business plan, you have a thing for ERP, MRP, like all of these different functions. Your business is now another SaaS product, and then well, that thing doesn't do this other thing, so I now layer on another widget on top of there. And that's really when we kind of talked about the Tower of Babel. I have this crazy mess of software that is aging and doesn't necessarily communicate with each other. And so the ontology, you can think of that as the fabric above that, that takes these source system of records and brings them into this model about how you actually operate. And it abstracts it away from the terrible system language that's there, or even the deficits that might be in some of these systems, because now with ontology, you can build these business functions and code that business logic that you needed to normally buy software for. You can now actually encode in the ontology as your business operations and build applications on top of that as well. And so the strategy comes back to, each one of those point solution is a silo in a business. Back to Eliano's point about what the 9/11 attacks, like we had all the information to make the decision, but it was siloed and not communicating. The ontology is that communication fabric across a business or across the intelligence space. And so that's really the way to think about it, is it is the fabric of communication across a business.
Hey, Chad. One of the things that really, at Palantir, I'm what you consider a non-coding entity. I don't have a technical background. I came from like the nonprofit world. I came from the public policy space. And so when I first came to Palantir, it took me some time to really understand, like, I was always a fan of the company, but to really understand what the differentiator was, um, the word that really helped me understand that was operational software. Could you talk a little bit more about that? And I think one of the examples would be like, a lot of times software or some sort of widget it'll give you like a pie chart or something and say, hey, look, your supply chain is screwed up. But we take pride in sort of outcomes and solving problems. Could you talk about what it is about Palantir and sort of whether it's the culture or the software? What is it that actually allows us to own the outcomes and be effective and not just be another widget?
Yeah. There's a video I created, the football video back in I think January. I created. We should post a link to that. But the
No, no, no. It's
analogy,
not. It's not. That's not just the video you created. It's the video that went literally viral across tech.
yeah,
I mean, you were
I
getting
think we
LinkedIn
had
messages about that video.
yeah we had tens of millions of views on that one. It was a pretty good video. But the analogy actually comes back to and is very relevant to this point. In a reporting landscape, it's about what happened or a deep dive into what's happening right now. And generally, they're in batch or micro batch. You're days or hours behind. And so when you're thinking about this, I'm like making a decision without the most fresh information. I'm making a decision in a silo, and I'm making it based on what happened, and then I'm going to kind of project forward. And so you think of reporting in the football context as if I was trying to win the football game by watching the scoreboard, and it's not going to be very effective, right? And you're going to try to make some play calls. Well, I'm down. I'll make some of these play calls. But really, what's needed is to understand the state of gameplay right now in real time. What are the best ways to optimize? How do I make the best decision for the play that I'm in right now on the field? So it's more of the real time playbook of how I operate to win the game, not just watch the scoreboard to see if I won. And so that's really kind of a really simple to easy to understand kind of analogy and difference between kind of the traditional cloud data warehouses with some BI stuff on top of it versus an operational application. It's the real-time playbook about how you operate. And culturally, we are like set up for that because of where our roots were in the DoD space. Is when you're on a battlefield, you need a real-time playbook about what do I do right now, and I can't wait till tomorrow for some more data. I need data right now, and help me make the best decision right now to win this battle, win this war. And that goes to the same thing when you're sitting on a plant floor at a customer here, and I have to figure out I'm short on this product. Something happened. What is the decision that I should make right now? And that's what we talk about with operationalizing it, and why culturally we've really been driven towards that. And that then drives decisions and feedback loops and actions. And those actions are what actually drive outcomes and values. And that's really when we talk about Foundry and AIP and our whole suite of tools, it's a decision-centric system. Those decisions are what drive the outcome and value.
I think also, like one, I would say one example of operationalize that really resonated with me. I was watching a demo, and I can't be specific about which one or what the use case was, but I was seeing a demo, and it was covering readiness, right? And so in a typical, in a lot of different software, you would say the readiness platform would say only 72% of your vehicles are operational because they've had an oil change, right? And so I think it might sound very simple, but I think one of the things that's really cool about Palantir, it's like not only will the platform tell you that, okay, 72% of your vehicles are ready to go, but then you can actually action the oil change. You can task it in the platform. So you're not having to leave the platform, query another platform, make a bunch of phone calls. You can actually do that in the platform. And now that might sound like, oh, big deal. Like you can just schedule an oil change here. But imagine into what Chad was talking about earlier in terms of scale, when you're managing these billion-dollar companies and you have these tasks, it adds up over time and it ends up costing you time, hours, money, etc. So I think the cool thing about AIP and sort of with large language models is now you can simply use the English language to actually task the AI agent to go ahead and do that stuff. And that's where that's where we talk about improving margins and sort of, on a larger scale across the country as our enterprises become more and more productive because they're leveraging AI agents that are being powered by companies like Palantir. Then you start to see GDP growth. And that's really the story, I think, long term. It's like, how do we, as a West, overcome our adversaries? And that's by outperforming them on a large scale. So that's why I'm really
Yeah.
passionate about the operational component.
Yeah, and you bring up the point around the action component, like orchestrating complex sets of actions across an enterprise, across many enterprise systems. As you scale, that only gets more difficult, and I think that's where we don't just have a data model. The ontology is the data, the logic, so like forecast models, optimization models, your business rules. That logic is also encoded in the ontology, and those actions and the orchestration of those actions is key to then quickly drive outcome. But it's also key when you talk about AI, because when I want to bring LLMs into the mix, like you're talking about, LLMs need to have context, right? We talk about context windows of LLMs. They need to have the context of your business. They weren't trained on your business operations. The ontology is really the richest source of your business context, because if you think of it as the digital twin of your business and your business process, then LLMs can navigate the ontology to understand and also use it as tools. And that's super key to why we can really deliver in days in these boot camps, is because I'm able to operationally deploy LLMs onto an ontology that is that representation. Now the LLM can use tools to navigate, take actions, run forecast models. And so that entire component is now layered in. So now you have LLMs navigating and across your business operations modeled in ontology. And that's super key about our like differentiator about how we move quickly versus a copilot, for example.
So you mentioned AI agents, but by looking at the offerings of other software companies, by looking what essentially companies say in the earnings call, they say, "Oh, we are deploying AI," but at the end of the day, they're just chat. What's the difference between a chat, AI chat, and an AI agent, and why is that important?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of our taglines we like to say is move beyond chat. There's a place for chat. Don't get me wrong, but on its own, it's not valuable. So let's just talk a second. Chat with LLMs. It's essentially a natural language filter on your data set. So as you're chatting with it, it can go query some stuff for you, but ultimately at the end of the day, that's something you probably already have in a report, but you were able to filter and get to it through natural language. It's somewhat helpful, but it's not transformational. Okay, maybe I can have it reason across or summarize some things. Again, that's nice, but that's not automating. That's not useful. And so chat does have its place, and the place, is interesting. We'll get into that in a minute. But if we then talk about the agent piece here and kind of the automation components around AI, building these agents at scale are difficult. And it's not just I deploy an LLM and I have an agent and I write a prompt and that prompt then queries the data. Like that's what a lot of these other products do. You have to do this in a productive state beyond a demo, and that's where a lot of these other products kind of fall apart versus what we're doing. And let me walk you kind of through that. Is when you're building an agent in our tool called AIP Logic, for example, I have multiple blocks of logic. Those blocks of logic have access to tools, and tools are key because LLMs are very stochastic. That means they're non-deterministic. The outcomes can vary, and that's what people call hallucinations. But in the real world, actually everything an LLM does is a hallucination. It's the question of, can we trust it? Is it what I want? Right? And so you need guardrails. And so AIP Logic gives us the guardrails to harness the good parts of the LLM while reducing the blast radius of these hallucinations and things. So LLMs can use the ontology to ground it in the truth of your business to reduce the hallucinations. We just put a blog post about this, about reducing hallucinations through this technique. We should post this out here as well. But the idea here is these agents also, like if I have an agent out there and let's say I'm using GPT-4o from OpenAI, or I'm using Claude 3 through Bedrock, or I've got my own model. It's great. I can, in AIP Logic, I can interchange those. But then it becomes like, well, how do I know for my anecdotal use case, it worked great. But when I run this 10,000 times across tons of variants, like how do I know it's effective? So for example, a great use case why we have 4 deployed engineers out at the edges, when you try to deploy that into production, you quickly realize like LLMs are very stochastic. You can get varying answers all over the place. So these 4 deployed engineers saw that, actually built a tool called AIP evals. So much like you would have in a traditional ML model, how do I know the model's effective? How accurate is it? So we actually have a framework to evaluate what's the right model, what's the right prompt, all these things in that space. So we have that. We have AIP Automate to then orchestrate work between agents so they can work together. That framework around the edges and how you can quickly and interchange these models as needed to find the right model, all of that starts to culminate together to create these very robust experiences. And the goal should really be that AI is transparent, that you don't know you're using Gen AI. But the problem is everyone's first experiences with ChatGPT, so they're used to chat. And so these agents running in the background automating things is not as necessarily flashy to a board, for example. But the cool part is now you can integrate these together. I can have a chat using agents to go take action and automate and do things. So there are some of those kind of things, but the end goal is how do I help a human do 100 times more, right? So it's how do I help people find things they wouldn't find before because I couldn't sift through these many things? How do I help them automate their tasks in the background? How do I extract unstructured data and turn it into structured, usable things? Like those are the really positive things we see with LLMs versus I just chat with my data, right? That's hopefully that answers your question.
I understood that in order to deploy effectively these LLMs, AI agents, you need to ground them to the ontology. I wonder if over time these AI agents become more stupid over time, or there is something that makes these AI agents evolve as the company evolves.
Yes. Good call out. Okay, so two things here. Models are constantly getting better. So what I'm talking about here with these agents, we're building a framework. So as models get better, these agents get better, more accurate. Hopefully, sometimes that's not always the case. We see model providers updating models, and all of a sudden, agents in a certain use case are getting worse. That's why we have the AIP evals framework. So there's that. But what you're bringing up is really a key point. Is part of creating this entire ecosystem, not just an agent, is as I'm making these decisions, capturing the institutional knowledge from people and giving that context to the AI, and then giving the feedback. So the reinforcement learning through human feedback, you can think of that as I'm capturing when AI did good or bad, or the feedback about how it should do things differently next time. We capture that also in the ontology so that the next run, so let's say we have an agent helping me with inventory shortage and it did something wrong, or in an example, customer service, it was helping me talk to a customer and write, kind of figure out what to go do. If I've been doing this for a long time, like, yeah, what the agent suggested was not right this time. Cool. Well, I can give it the feedback that, hey, it was wrong and here was why it was wrong. As we see that over time, we can actually build these principles about how we want that to give the context, essentially the standard operating procedures about how I operate. That's normally stuck in someone's head on a phone call on a whiteboard, like it's the kind of the dark matter of your enterprise. You can capture that into the ontology and give it to the context to these LLMs so that the next time it gets better and better and it learns. And so that human in the loop feedback is key, but you have to have the framework to capture that. So that's where like having the end-to-end platform with the security built on top of the ontology, it all just happens natively. And that's why we can execute it so quickly in like 2 days in a boot camp.
Hey,
Chad,
Chad. Oh, sorry. Evan, you go first.
I appreciate you. First of all, I appreciate the spaces and you guys coming and joining in. Make sure you're following the speakers. They're all fantastic. You said the word forward deployed engineers. And you also, when I look at your bio, forward deployed architect. What exactly does that mean?
Titles are a funny thing at Palantir. We in all the words, everyone gives us crap because we have different words, and ontology, freaks people out. But forward deployed engineer, forward deployed architect, really is the drive that we're sitting with the customer closest to the problem. Versus, because we get billed a lot for, hey, you're a consultancy, right? And no, like we drive outcomes. What does that mean? And how is it different? I posted this analogy the other day about really the difference of what a forward deployed engineer is versus a consultant or someone building it, right? And so if you take let's just talk about like an analogy of an F1 team. If you're an F1 team and you're an engineer on the F1 team and you're like the expert in building some part, you're the guy that's designing, bending the metal, and the expert. You show up to the pit on race day, you see how it performs, you're getting feedback, you might even be able to machine a new part on the spot, tweaking something to get better performance. That forward deployed engineer has that same capability as that like F1 engineer to actually create the product and the code in the platform. So a forward deployed engineer, forward deployed architect, like I can go in there and create a new feature in the platform live in front of a customer, and they can use it on their platform. And then if it's useful, we can bring that back a house and give it to everybody. So if it's a new chart widget, a new functionality, that AIP evals that I was talking about to evaluate LLM agents, that was built by forward deployed engineers that are out there on the edge with customers seeing the problem. And so they design the product that's needed, not the product that's needed for an architecture diagram for a SaaS company to sell. And so you think about that. And then I don't want to discount consultants because partners are super important to us as well. They're just different functions. So like versus a consultant might be a mechanic that's going to work on your car. Now, the forward deployed engineer at the edge takes those product learnings back, and they make a better design for an engine that Mercedes or whoever can, or Ferrari, or whoever can bring back to their cars, and then now all of their cars have this better learning, right? And that's what a forward deployed engineer can do. Versus a consultant maybe would be more like a mechanic. They're going to be able to work on a car. They can put a kit car together. They can modify. They can optimize a few things, but they're not necessarily the ones designing and building everything from scratch. But they're super valuable because they might have domain expertise in a certain area and a certain business, but they can wield the tools to get what's done needed to be done. And so that's like the differential between that. And so those forward deployed engineers can actually modify, build, and those things. And they're sitting at the edge. We say, like, I hear it all the time, they are chewing glass. Like, they're eating the pain of our customers and building the products that help reduce that pain for them. And so that's why we're building stuff that really matters versus, like, I have an idea in my startup and I want to go sell it. Like, those are two distinctly different things, and that really gives us an edge on how we actually build things that are like impactful quickly, because that feedback loop is so shortened, right? Like, a lot of times you'll build a product at the edge and show someone that same day or the next day, right? Like, you can't do that if you're a consultant or a deployment on another platform. Like, it's just not possible. But all of that, again, is built upon Apollo. We can actually do that because of our other product, Apollo, because we can do continuous integration and deployment of these massive stacks in a secure way. So without Apollo, we couldn't have these forward deployed engineers. So this whole ecosystem of tools has created that, like, super fast feedback loop for us.
Hey, Chad, question. So while I work at Palantir, while I'm one of your colleagues, I've never actually been to an AIP bootcamp. I've heard about it just like a lot of our speakers here and a lot of the people tuning in. Obviously, I know what they are, but could you kind of explain to people, like, what is an AIP bootcamp? Why are they so cool? Why are people talking about them? Why has it become such a big part of our outreach? And, like, what's the unique differentiator between an AI bootcamp and what maybe another SaaS company could do?
Yeah, I mean, we've always heard these criticisms about, we can't scale or go to market, all this. Like, yeah, we're going to innovate. And where AIP really has come in is there's been so much, and I kind of talked about this, everyone thinks it's chat with my data. The quickest way to break that down is to show up and get people hands on to build their intuition. And that's actually where this boot camp started. Was not this massive strategic thing. This is what we're going to go do. It was, we're testing things out. We wanted to go help people understand how to use AI differently than chat. That's literally how this started. And people were so excited because they got hands on with the tools themselves that they learned so quickly about the product and how it was different, how they could wield it to get things done. Like, that was rich. So then we did a few more. And it was like wildfire. The reaction that people had was, I've been trying to do this in these other tools for so long, and we literally just did this in an afternoon in AIP. Holy crap. Now the wheels start turning about use cases, how I go do things. So a boot camp can be anywhere between like an afternoon, one day, all the way up to 4 or 5 days. Generally, they're 2 to 3 days. And it's basically where 2 or 3 Palantir engineers, maybe more, maybe less, depending on the boot camp, will show up at a customer. Sometimes they're shared across multiple customers. Like, we'll have one for an automotive industry and all the different automotive manufacturers, and we might have more engineers there. But the idea at the end of the day, potential customers or customers, we're even boot camping with existing customers to get their hands on the tools to learn about how AI and AIP is different. And then they build that intuition, which then sparks the light bulb of use cases of, oh, if I think beyond chat, I could get so much more value. Now that's where the value gets for us, is they now can think about how to use the platform differently. And that light bulb moment for everybody in these things is so much fun, because we also hear, like, we've shown up to boot camps where literally there was a massive conference room with another cloud company that had a ton of people there. There was like 100 people from this company in there talking about Gen AI, and it was just slideware. And by the end of the week, everybody had transitioned over and wanted to be a part of the boot camp. And by the end of that week, they had wanted to go show their CEO what they had built, and they wanted to take it to production. Like, that's an incredible sales cycle if you see that type of experience, and then rinse and repeat. And we're doing hundreds of these things, right?
I just think it's super cool. Dr. Karp, he's like, we don't play golf, we play software. It's like, we're not in the PowerPoint business. We don't do steak dinners, although ironically, like I have the steak dinner tour, which is kind of a joke that's derived from that. But it's like, hey, we're not going to just show you a PowerPoint or like, chug a few beers on the golf course. Like we're actually going to just whip out the software and just, walk it and show you what we're capable of doing. And I think that's really powerful. And so I'm really fortunate to work with folks that are super smart that can go out there and get real use cases up and running in as little as like 6 hours. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and that's the thing that no one believes until they do it, right? So you hear Dr. Karp on our earnings call of like, you take your months and we'll do it in hours. Like that's real, and you don't believe it until you do it. And then so we'll go do these boot camps, multiple boot camps with customers, whatever it takes, so that they can see that firsthand and become the believer. And that's the lightning effect that we really see across these boot camps. Is it's excitement, and like you said, it's also not just like a boring like executive briefing. It's like a rock concert. It's fun. We have a good time. We build cool use cases, and so the energy at these. And I know I see some of these faces of people in these spaces. I actually know some of these people have been. Like Raj was at a boot camp not too long ago. So there's people here that have experienced them, and the same feedback goes is everybody loves them. They're super exciting, and it shortens the sales cycle for us. Instead of a 3-month pilot, people get hands on with the tool and start building use cases in days, hours. And so, then that transitions into the longer, cycle. But the idea there is you can get past a lot of the BS that normally would take 3 months in a matter of days now.
Amit, I saw you on mute.
Yeah, so I want to transition to culture. I know we have about 20 minutes left. We're ending this at around 11:15. The culture at Palantir is really unique. Arnie and I got to go to AIP Con back in June and got to talk to a bunch of employees and kind of understand a bit more about the internal dynamics of the company. I want to start with you, Iliano, on this. Two questions. A, what is Alex Karp like? I know you've spent some time with the CEO of the company, and I'm sure a lot of people here would be curious to get some insights from you on that. And then B, if you had to describe the actual culture at Palantir in a few words that would sum up what it means to be a Palantir employee, how would you word that?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I'll just be very blunt. Like I love Dr. Karp. Like he's just a great human being. Um, he's inspirational in the sense that, this is his life. He's committed his life to Palantir. And, when you think about leadership, you want to follow somebody like that, someone who's made this their mission and is in it for bigger things rather than just, making money. It's really about solving some of the world's greatest challenges. And we take a lot of pride in the mission of this company. And so, um, I think a lot of what you see on TV and in the interviews, like he's just a very genuine, straightforward person. There's not like an act, and that's he's not a politician. Like what you see is what you get. And it's just an honor, and I feel very fortunate every day to play some role in helping take this company forward. So, and I know a lot of my colleagues feel the same way. It's like we just feel so fortunate to be at this company that has a mission that is focused on outcomes. That whether it's improving the safety and the efficacy of warfighters in the West, or helping a company achieve, improve their manufacturing. We take pride in the work that we do, and so there's a lot of ownership. I think when you think about culture, to answer your second question, there's a few words that really describe the culture here. I would say number one is ownership, right? You can't get a bunch of people at a company like this that are super smart, and in many ways super weird. We're all weird in our own way, but you can't convene this type of group unless you give them ownership. And I think that's really what was so surprising to me when I showed up here. I remember asking someone, I'm like, "Hey, who's responsible for this, or who should go to this dinner and represent us?" And I remember my lead at the time was like, "Dude, if you're asking who's responsible for it, it's you." And I think that was sort of like, it took me an adjustment coming from sort of the nonprofit sector where there's a lot of, working at a major hospital system. There's a ton of bureaucracy, and here it's just like, here you go, you're in charge, and you when you're working with people that are so smart and so passionate, and you're following leaders like Dr. Karp, like Sham, and others that work 24/7, you take it to the next level in order to not fail, and also to just do a really good job. And so I know I sound I'm like love bombing here and stuff like that. But it truly is a special place to work. And what you hear, I think that there's a really good article that I highly recommend for everybody if you really want to understand Palantir culture. It was The Primacy of Winning. It's my favorite piece ever written by a Palantir, and it was written by Shyam Sankar, our CTO. It's just it's a masterpiece in terms of writing and in terms of describing the culture here. So I'll post it on my Twitter feed after the call. But that would be my answer. I don't know, Chad. What do you think?
Yeah, I think ownership. Like if I had to sum it up in one word, ownership. Like you are your own entrepreneur. Like me starting these videos and being on X and all this stuff wasn't blessed or asked or pretty much anything else. It was like, hey, we're making some internal videos and they turned out pretty good. We should do this externally, and then things just kind of grow. And I took ownership. Like that story, but you multiply that across business, different verticals. Our hospital ops group is like super entrepreneurial. That's why we're in 20% of the hospitals with our scheduling work. Like that type of entrepreneurial work is the core of how we operate, and it's just culturally ingrained everywhere. And like you said, we have a bunch of very smart, very weird people, and we all have our spikes, and we realize it. And so it's a matter of like how we work together in the most effective way and reduce the blast radius of our weirdness, is really the way I think about it.
I wonder how you find those people. It seems like when you find the right person, it's an awesome fit and it comes in, but it could be a little difficult to find. So, Chad, Eliana, I'd be curious to hear about kind of your journeys on how you even ended up at Palantir.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a college dropout. I'm a weirdo. I've got 6 kids and I live in Arkansas. I'm not the prototypical tech person that you would think about. And I have a vast experience dealing with chickens. It's like real.
And he wrestles with mountain lions on the weekend for fun.
And bears, yeah, bears and mountain lions. So bears, whether it's bears in the market or bears on my land, I've got them. But like that's the eccentric weirdo, is something that like I just see us looking past. Like I don't care about where you came from or whatever. It's like, what is your intellect? How are you looking at problems? Are you driven to go think about things differently? Are you aggressive to go after new opportunities and take it? And so like we look for those things in people that are just maybe not the normal stereotypical thing. And so like you see in a lot of our recruiting and our work, it's we're asking strange or different questions because we're looking for the outlier. And I've heard a couple different people in the company talk about kind of, are you within 2 standard deviations to really know? And if you're outside that, you don't even know that this person is like that next level smart. And so a lot of that is finding those people, asking the right questions that are maybe a little bit different to see the responses. And so it's a trick to find them, and anyone that's been through the kind of the interview process, it's robust. So there's a lot of people asking lots of strange questions, to kind of make it through the door. So it's not typical in that. From my journey, I had experience deploying Palantir, in a very large enterprise and built some pretty cool stuff, and so that gave me a pretty good basis of foot in the door. And so when I got tired of writing docs at Amazon and wanted to build real things, I called up Ted and Sham and was like, I want to come build real things again. And so it was a little bit different of a path for me, but it's a company of weirdos, and it's great.
Um, Yeah, I'm not going to go into the exact details of how I ended up at Palantir because those are reserved for steak dinners only. But I will say that you know I spent the first 10 years of my career in the fundraising major gift space, and so um, in order to be an effective fundraiser, you have to master the art of storytelling, right? And it's like, what's the story you're telling? How are you compelling people? How you to make a donation, a large donation, an investment into a nonprofit organization. And so um, I spent the first 10 years storytelling. Simultaneously, I became a huge fan of the company. I was a retail investor. I was just on Twitter, tweeting stuff out. I wasn't as good as Amit and Karp and Garcia and all these other guys, but I was tweeting stuff out and basically I was working in the nonprofit sector and I was like kind of getting tired of it. I wanted something different. And I bought a Palantir hat from the Palantir store, and I would wear that hat. And I remember the organization that I was before coming to Palantir, the director was like, "Elena, why the hell are you wearing a Palantir hat?" I was like, "Oh, I'm a big fan of the company. I'm a big fan of the CEO. I love their mission and their beliefs in meritocracy, their commitment to the West, so the United States and its allies. I just love it, and I love how the leadership sort of marches to the beat of its own drum. Like, Palantir does things its way. We're never going to try to be like other companies. Our leaders, Dr. Karp, like they are one of one human beings. Like, you know, uh, Steph Cohen's a one of one human being. Like these guys have a belief in the way that software should be built and how institutions in the West should be supported, and we just do it. And so that those types of beliefs drew me to the company, and one thing led to another. And my life got changed in an instant. I didn't go through an interview process. It just happened one day. Again, I won't go into details, but um, I then started at Palantir in January of 2022, I want to say, yeah. And ever since then, it's just been every day I learn something new. And again, I'm a non-coding entity, but I'm surrounded with people like Chad who are just brilliant engineers that are so enthusiastic about helping me help tell their story. And so that's kind of what I'm in the business of doing now. So I'm not necessarily raising money, but I am going out there and looking for institutions. I'm looking for influential people that, like, for example, like Evan, like you're you've built such a tremendous platform, and to me, like educating you about Palantir. Like I remember when we had dinner, just telling you the story. I never once asked for a favor. I never once asked for anything. I was just say, hey, like how can we educate the world about Palantir and software that works? And I think that's sort of the story that I'm telling now. And again, I'm just really fortunate to have good relationships with Amit, with Arnie, with Shai, and others, and of course Chad, and the community that we're building here. It's about getting the word out on what we're doing and telling the story the right way, and not letting other people, oftentimes people with bad intent, tell the story for us. We're not going to tolerate that anymore.
Palantir does things its own way, you said. And we know that the corporate structure is very flat compared with other organizations. But at the same time, you emphasize the primacy of winning. So you have a very goal-oriented company. How do you avoid conflict?
Um, I'll jump in first, but I think disagreement is a good thing. Conflict is a good thing, right? We get that I think oftentimes there's like there's like a funny saying. It's like if you do a really good job, you get rewarded by having somebody else come in and also do the same job. And so it's like we don't have single points of failure, whether it's in our security infrastructure, whether it's in the way that we deploy and update things. And I know Chad can talk more about the technicalities than I can, but like there's constantly a competition for the best way to do something. I've had to deal with that myself, and my colleagues, the ones that I disagree with the most, have been the ones that have challenged me the most. And so I'm grateful for them, and I hope they feel the same way about me. But we all have ideas. We all have our thesis on how to do certain things, and ultimately, it's like let the best one win, right? I think that's healthy.
Yeah, I think there's the culture of disagreement is strong, but like in our onboarding guide, there's a full page thing, big bold words, don't be an asshole. And that comes back to it is it's great, it's fine to disagree, fine to not see eye to eye with someone, but you don't get to be an asshole about it. And you can, even if you think someone's doing something wrong, you don't go behind people's backs, you don't do any of that kind of stuff. So that culturally is ingrained across everything, is let's disagree as like civil human beings and adults, but you don't get to be an asshole about it. So ultimately, like that helps drive things, and the people with the most momentum based on real world drive and experience. So like if I'm doing something and it's working, that's going to mean a lot more than someone has an idea and it's not working out in the field or driving. So really the ideas that have momentum as they're working and you've battle tested them, those are the ideas that are going to live on.
Also, yeah, I would say not just, yeah, so don't be an asshole. And then I think what's even more important is assume good intent, right? Assume that your colleague, while they may have a different idea than you, where they might have a different thesis, like they're still trying to solve the problem. They're still trying to improve the business. They're not trying to do something negative. So assume good intent. Don't be an asshole, and ownership. If you're going to do something, own it, and own it really well.
Honestly, that is really awesome to hear. I feel like culture is an under talked about thing at a lot of when we're talking about different companies and stuff. And clearly, there's a really strong underlying one at Palantir. Amit, I saw you on mute.
Yeah, I was going to wrap it up with also a little bit broader of a discussion around AI as a buzzword. I know, Chad, you talked about AI, why the ontology is important for AI, but in general, what are you seeing in the enterprise landscape for why customers care about AI? I mean, do they hit up Palantir because they think of you guys as AI and then they realize there's more to it, or what exactly do enterprise software companies do when it comes to enabling AI meaningfully?
Yeah, I mean, like not in my own words, but in analysts and in our customers, I hear this from both. Like, why is Palantir the only one getting operational applications with AI into production? And we can go on all the technicalities and all these things, but like that's the sentiment of what I'm seeing. And so there's a couple different avenues where people are frustrated of trying to deploy AI, and they deploy it and it's not useful. I mean, I've seen people that deployed thousands of co-pilots out into their enterprise, and they're like, I don't know how I get value out of, if they're even adding value, unless I just kind of turn them off and do like a customer satisfaction score. Like, that is not transformational. Right. So I hear a lot of those kind of stories where there's struggles, there's the desire, there's the hype that people want to, but these other companies aren't fully delivering beyond a demo or a POC. And that's when we say, like, move to production, get to production. That's our total focus. And I used to tell my teams too, is like, unless it's in production, it's not adding value. And so everything we should be focused on is not the cool demo to sell the product. It's the, how do I help this customer get into production so they get value? And if they're getting value, then the financials will work out in the right way, right? So that's really the change in focus is on outcomes, not trying to sell that widget or that demo. So
And do you
that's
think
kind of what I'm seeing.
I was gonna say, do you think customers are actually realizing that they need to care about outcomes over the metaphorical steak dinners, or is it still a struggle to get them to realize that it's not about widgets anymore?
It depends on the group you're talking to. A lot of IT organizations are just looked as service providers for the business internally, and all the IT groups are thinking about is like, what tool do I need, not necessarily what outcome. They're always looked as a cost center, right? And instead of IT and technology be looking as a profit center about how can an IT group actually do something that significantly adds more revenue or reduce costs. And business people are thinking that all the time, right? So the business teams are thinking about outcomes because they're going to sign up for the dollars to go do something. They're responsible for the P&L, right? So those groups are usually kind of opposed, or not necessarily opposed, but not always aligned on the same thing. So um, what I'm seeing more and more is excitement from business people wanting to deploy AI to help their P&L, to drive business value. Then they go to their IT department, and the IT department goes, okay, well, I've got XYZ vendor that's doing some AI, let's try them. And then it fails. And so they try another vendor, and it fails. And so we love being last in that. If they come to us, they're gonna see like, holy crap, all these other people didn't work and you did. Like, that's just even a stronger story. Now, I would love for everyone to come to us first, and as we get the brand name and brand recognition, as everyone sees us deploying here now, I think that will be more of the case. And I think that's really the tide I'm starting to see is people are starting to now, come to us to help solve these operational use cases first. And so that it's a pretty cool dynamic to see the change, but it's still the age-old IT versus business thing in a lot of enterprises, but it's not everywhere. I mean, some enterprises are more progressive, some are not.
We spoke a lot about Palantir being unique. And in this cluster, there is one unique point that only Palantir so far has been able to build the community. Palantir is building an insanely big community of passionate people, investors. Where do you see the community going?
No, that's a great question, Arnie. Chad, let me just real quick say that,
Yep.
look, the community exists already, right? I am a product of the community. I met a colleague yesterday that basically came from Wall Street Bets Reddit subreddit, which is hilarious. I'm actually having lunch with him today to kind of hear about his story. But the community is really powerful. There's a lot of things that we're planning for the community. I think ultimately, like, why do we even have a community, right? It's not just about looking at a chart and the numbers and the stock going up and down. Like, that's great, cool, whatever. It's about what are the common values? Like, what does it mean to like wear a Palantir hat? It's like you believe in meritocracy. It's like you believe in these set of values. You believe in owning outcomes, and I think that's why we as a software company, that's why I brought back the merch store. Obviously with Dr. Karp's blessings, but it was like we want to give people the opportunity to showcase their love and their support for the company, and we're really grateful for them. I think moving forward, it's about how can not Chad, Chad, obviously I'll let him talk in a second, but how can we educate people that want to learn more, that content creators that are covering the company, like how can we give them information, obviously within legal framework, to to basically educate their viewers. And I think that's ultimately what we're in the business of doing. So whether it's on Reddit or Twitter or other different venues, we just want to be more transparent, and have people feel like they're supported. And so that's something that I'm really excited to work on over the next 6 to 12 months.
And then let me just say real quick before Chad goes that that is one thing that I think has been really special with Palantir. We obviously know Tesla has one of the largest communities in the world, and that, quite frankly, is because Elon he talks to people on Twitter. He just responds to their questions and like gives them different insights that is really special. And those people, it's very hard for you to not like the community that you're part of when you feel like you're engaged in the community. And part of being engaged is when leadership comes down and actually acknowledges you. And so I think Palantir uniquely has started acknowledging the community over the past 6 months, and that's just led to people really caring about being a part of, as Ileana said, this common set of values that we all agree with, and that we can follow over the next decade.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's I love answering people's questions, educating, and really, like, if I had to sum it up, it's I want people to think about Palantir not as a black box, but an unwalled garden. Like, it has the whole ecosystem and everything that is open and transparent, and is driven towards that mission, not this secretive black box, because that's truly not what we are. And so that's really the kind of the dispelling the myths and helping people understand what do we actually do. A lot of times when I talk to people and they see the platform and I show them, they're like, holy crap, I had no idea. And by the way, that was me in 2020. Never heard of Palantir, didn't know. And showed up and I was like, I don't need another data integration platform. Go away. That was my kind of initial response to it. Once I got my hands on it, so I'm like, holy crap, there's a lot here. This is like everything I've dreamed of. And so it's that. How do we get that so that the message is really the excitement about what is there, not I have no idea what this is, who are you, what is a Planeteer, right? And so it's really that shift in education that we're going after.
I think it's been a really awesome thing to see, and seeing Amit and Arnie at the recent events was just fantastic for me. There's not many companies doing that, and it's really cool to see you guys doing it. As we enter the spaces here, Iliano, I may be exposing you a little bit here. You talked about the Palantir shop, and I see you tweeting out all this stuff of awesome merch we have coming soon. Why is your profile picture not a Palantir hat?
Um, Admittedly, I don't want to lose my blue check mark when you change the photo, which I think is like so bizarre. It's like if you change your photo, it's like you lose your blue check mark. And I know that sounds like really lame, but no, you're right. I'm gonna get a nice Palantir hat on. And I'm going to change my profile picture just for you. So thank you, Evan, for bringing that to light.
I'm looking forward to it.
And
Awesome.
yeah, and just one last thing, the merch store, like again, like not a lot of companies can sell merch because they're not built on like a core set of values and sort of a commitment to those values. And we are, I'm really excited about the next phase. We're going to roll out a full store in the coming weeks, and over the next, I think, 6 to 12 months. The people that have been following me, like, we're going to go from hats and t-shirts and stuff to like cool stuff, like things that I don't want to ruin the surprise, but really unique collectors items. So stay tuned, but we really appreciate everyone's support. And again, like, we're really appreciative of the community, and ultimately, like, the merch store is for the community. I had some colleagues asking for discounts or whatever, and I kind of respectfully told them to kick rocks. Like, this is for the community. I'm happy if they want to buy merch. I love seeing my colleagues rock merch, but this is really for the community. So really appreciate everybody.